and a Republican White House, something you haven't experienced since your victory in 2008. But so how will Democrats adjust their strategy and priorities going into the next term?
Well, Kojo...
Are you going to be the party of no?
Well, let me just say the Republicans wrote this playbook. We're coming into this election, which was, a modest victory by Donald Trump, not a comprehensive victory. We picked up seats, nowhere near as many as we'd like, but we picked up seats in both the House and the Senate. And they have diminished numbers, and they've got the majority. But the Republicans, who had a far worse situation in 2009 than we have now, basically wrote the playbook of relentless, implacable opposition. And how did that work out for them? They had a decisive win 2 years later in the midterm elections. Now, I'm not saying mindlessly oppose this president, but I think we do a disservice to our country in normalizing how Donald Trump became president. He fearmonged, he demagogued, he used racism, he used bigotry, and we can't forget that. We can't let somehow a whitewash of that now that he won the election. Well, let's have an era of good feelings. We need to remind people of who he is. A tiger does not change his stripes. Right. And we also need to oppose him if he actually tries to implement the agenda he ran on in the campaign.
Well, surely the loyal opposition ought to do, in fact, that. Maybe the tone will be somewhat different. But, I was talking to someone about what Trump may or may not do for the specific Washington metropolitan area, and maybe more so than even the Obama White House and administration, might be more inclined, given his business background, to take a fresher look at Metro and what can be done for the business interests of Virginia, Maryland, and D.C. to make sure that the spine of the region doesn't continue to crash.
Yeah, maybe he'll do that while he imposes a hiring freeze in the federal government, Tom. But I don't know how lucky he'll be in corralling Republican votes to support that. They've been hostile to that heretofore. Any discussion of operating subsidies or even trying to fight to keep the $150 million commitment we got 7 years ago has been a huge struggle. And if he can provide some Republican ballast to that debate, that would be great and welcome, and certainly I'd support it. But count me skeptical in his ability to deliver that.
I'm trying to look at going forward. We could rehash the election and how Hispanics didn't turn out nearly as much as people thought in terms of Clinton, or how poorly or great she did as a candidate. But the region, the business region, the business of the region has to go forward. Where do you see the
Tom,
Democrats playing that role?
Just a second there, Tom. I'm not rehashing the election.
No, I'm not. I apologize.
I'm looking at his agenda.
I don't mean to suggest you're rehashing the election. I'm just saying I'm trying to just get you to look now going forward. How will you take his agenda and act in cohesion with the other Democrats?
Well, I think, frankly, most of that agenda has to be opposed. We're not going to support a ban on Muslims. We're not going to support the dismantlement of NATO. We're not going to support waterboarding and worse as an American policy in terms of how we treat prisoners of war. We're not going to support bigotry against immigrants. We're not going to support mass deportation of 11 million Americans. So, if you got other ideas, or if you've changed your mind and all of that, which is how you got elected, we're all ears.
Well, that's the suggestion, and already in the transition, some of the people he's appointing for transition positions are rock rib traditional Republicans. Now, there are some very conservative people involved on these issues, and I don't doubt you'll stand up for the principles that you've always stood up for. I'm just trying to think how this will. It seems to me the choppy waters are pretty choppy for Democrats.
Well, of course. I mean, we're in the minority, and we have to, I think, plant our flag very clearly, because more people voted for Hillary Clinton than voted for Donald Trump. And we're not a party that's disappearing or falling apart. There's actually a fair amount of cohesion. We have to recover. We have to regroup. We have to decide what it means to be the loyal opposition under these circumstances. But it doesn't mean normalizing how he got elected or kind of conflating agendas such that there's not really much difference between us, and we're going to give him a fair chance.
Well, let's talk in practical terms about that. One of the first things President-elect Trump said was that he's going to invest heavily in infrastructure. Transportation is a big part of your work in Congress. If he follows through, what would that mean in your view, or what might that mean for our region?
Well, it depends what he means, Kojo. I mean, is this another sort of pipe dream, or is this something concrete, specific that he's willing to pay for and that he'll work hard to get Republicans to finally pay for? If he means that, he's got my support, and he'll have lots of Democratic support. But if it's just another scheme or dream that is an empty promise with kind of a jerry-rigged thing to finance it, that won't work, and it will collapse. And the bigger problem on infrastructure investment is on the Republican side of the aisle.
Okay.
Here's Suzanne in Falls Church, Virginia. Suzanne, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Kojo. Thank you, Representative Connolly. I was out doing get out the vote efforts in your district and in neighboring ones, as I've done since moving to the Washington, D.C. area in 1998. And I am frightened, along with a lot of the people I met in that process, of the implications of the Trump presidency and the implications of the hateful language that was used. I understand he's not a man who's given to apologizing, but is there any way to encourage him to be a true leader and tell his followers not to continue that kind of thing? And the second question,
if I can use a biblical reference, maybe he'll have a St. Paul metanoia, a complete conversion, a change of view. He'll fall off the horse and see the light. I wouldn't count on it. The man is 70, and as I said, a tiger doesn't change its stripes. So I think we're in for, as Tom said, choppy waters. But we have to make sure we're ready for that. And we don't get ready for that by watering down our own values or our own agenda. We fight for what we believe in. And hopefully that tempers what he does. But if we're not up to our role as loyal opposition, then he's going to run roughshod over us, and the agenda will be much harsher, with sharper edges, and do more damage than it needs to.
Fairfax County.